All right, so today we're going to get into something pretty fundamental, and that is grammar. Those common English grammar mistakes that we all kind of make and how to fix them.
Yeah.
And, I think that this is helpful for really anyone from beginners to people who maybe know English really well but want to, sound better,
Right.
more polished in their everyday communications.
Exactly.
And our mission today is to equip you with a better understanding of how to avoid these mistakes and speak with more confidence.
Yeah, I think that's something that we all could use a little bit more of.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in.
Sure.
One of the things I see all the time that drives me crazy is misuse of apostrophes.
Oh, yeah.
Like people using apostrophes to make plurals.
Yeah, like apple with an apostrophe S.
Exactly.
When you just mean more than one apple.
Right.
That's a big one.
Yeah, so let's be clear. An apostrophe indicates possession.
Right. Yeah.
Like John's book.
John's book.
The cat's toy.
The cat's toy.
It's that relationship. It's not just for making a word plural.
Right. And you see that like everywhere, like in signs and just all over the place.
All the time. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, why that mistake is so common. I mean, an apostrophe does kind of make a word look a little fancier.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe people think it looks better.
Maybe so.
Okay, let's move on to another one.
Sure.
That always seems to trip people up. There and there.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
So these words, they sound exactly the same, but they have completely different meanings and spellings.
Exactly. And I think, it's really easy to get them mixed up, especially when you're writing quickly.
Or reading quickly, you kind of skim over it and you're not really paying attention.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So let's go through each one and define it. So they're THEIR.
Yeah.
This is a possessive pronoun. It shows that something belongs to a group of people.
Right.
For example, their house is beautiful, meaning the house belongs to them.
Exactly.
Okay, now there, THERE.
Mhm.
This one refers to a place or a location.
Right.
Like the book is over there,
Mhm.
meaning it's in a specific spot.
Exactly.
And then finally, their THERE.
Mm-hmm.
This is a contraction of they are.
Right.
So they're going to the store means they are going to the store.
Exactly.
So what's a way that people can remember this?
Well, I think one really simple trick is to just kind of, take a second and think about what the word means in the sentence.
Yeah.
Like if it's showing ownership, then it's there.
There.
If it's referring to a place, then it's there.
There.
And if you can replace it with they are and it still makes sense,
Then it's there.
then it's there. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about another one and me.
Oh, yeah. That's another one that a lot of people get confused about.
All the time.
Yeah.
And especially like when you're talking about yourself with other people.
Right. Yeah. Like, my friend and I went to the store versus my friend and me went to the store.
Mm-hmm. Right. And people get confused. Like, when is it when is it me?
Exactly. And it all comes down to whether the pronoun is the subject or the object of the sentence.
Okay, so can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So the subject is the person or thing that's doing the action.
Okay.
And the object is the person or thing that's receiving the action.
Okay, so in the sentence, the dog chased the cat. The dog is the subject because it's doing the chasing.
Exactly.
And the cat is the object because it's being chased.
Right.
Okay, I get it.
So when you're talking about yourself with other people,
Mm-hmm.
you have to figure out if you're the subject or the object.
Okay, so let's say John and I went to the store.
Mm-hmm.
John and I are the subject.
Right, because you're the ones doing the going.
Exactly.
So I is correct in that case.
But if you said the email was sent to Sarah and I,
Mm-hmm.
then that would be incorrect.
Right, because in that case, Sarah and you are the object.
Right, we're receiving the email.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it should be the email was sent to Sarah and me.
Okay, so what's an easy way to remember this?
Well, one trick that I use is to just take the other person out of the sentence
Okay.
and see if it sounds right with just I or me.
Okay, so if we take John out of the first sentence, it would be, I went to the store.
Right, which sounds correct.
Right. And if we take Sarah out of the second sentence, it would be, the email was sent to me.
Exactly, and that also sounds correct.
Got it.
So if you just kind of remove the other person from the equation for a second,
Yeah.
it can really help you to figure out if you should be using I or me.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another one, less versus fewer.
Oh, yeah. This is another one that I see people get wrong all the time.
All the time.
And it's understandable because they kind of mean the same thing,
Right.
but there is a subtle difference.
Right. So basically, fewer is for things that you can count.
Exactly.
And less is for things that you can't count.
Right. So if you can put a number in front of the noun,
Mm-hmm.
then you use fewer.
Fewer.
So, for example, I have fewer books than you.
Mm-hmm.
Or she has fewer siblings than her friend.
Right, but if you can't put a number in front of the noun, then you use less.
Exactly, like, I have less patience than you.
Hmm.
Or there is less traffic today.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really not that complicated once you kind of get the hang of it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you have to kind of remember.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on to another one. Subject-verb agreement.
Oh, yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah.
And it's basically making sure that the verb in a sentence agrees with the subject in number.
Right, so singular subjects take singular verbs and plural subjects take plural verbs.
Exactly. And this is something that you learn in, like, elementary school.
Right.
But it's amazing how many people still get it wrong.
Yeah. So, for example, you might hear someone say he don't like pizza.
Right, and that's incorrect because he is a singular subject.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be he doesn't like pizza.
Right. Or she goes to the park.
Mm-hmm.
Would be incorrect. It should be she goes to the park.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah, it's just about paying attention to whether the subject is singular or plural and making sure that the verb matches.
Okay, let's move on to another one. Double negatives.
Oh, yeah. This is one that can really trip people up.
Yeah, because it's something that we hear a lot in everyday speech.
Right, like, I don't need no help.
Right, exactly.
But in standard English, that's incorrect.
Right. Because two negatives actually cancel each other out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't need no help actually means you do need help.
Which is not what you're trying to say.
Right.
So how do we fix this?
Well, you just need to use one negative.
Okay.
So you could say, I don't need any help, or I need no help.
Right.
But you don't want to use both, don't and no, in the same sentence.
Got it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that you have to be careful of.
Okay. Let's move on to another one, the and which.
Oh, yeah. These are two words that a lot of people get confused about.
All the time.
And it's understandable because they can both be used to introduce clauses that provide more information about a noun.
Right.
But there is a subtle difference in how they're used.
Right. So that is used to introduce a restrictive clause, which is a clause that's essential to the meaning of the sentence.
Exactly. And which is used to introduce a non-restrictive clause, which is a clause that's not essential to the meaning of the sentence.
So can you give us an example?
Sure. So let's say you have a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
The book that is on the table is mine.
Mm-hmm.
That is a restrictive clause because it's telling us which book is mine.
Right.
If we remove that clause, the sentence doesn't make sense.
Right. It would just be the book is mine, which doesn't tell us anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if we say the book which is on the table is mine,
Mm-hmm.
that's a non-restrictive clause because it's just giving us extra information about the book.
Okay. And we could remove that clause and the sentence would still make sense.
Exactly. It would just be the book is mine,
Right.
which is a perfectly grammatically correct sentence.
Got it.
So the key is to figure out if the clause is essential to the meaning of the sentence.
Okay. So if it's essential, use that.
Exactly.
And if it's not essential use, which, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And one way to remember this is that restrictive clauses that start with that
Mm-hmm.
don't have commas around them,
Okay.
but non-restrictive clauses that start with which do have commas around them.
Right. So the commas kind of set off the non-essential information.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another one, ending a sentence with a preposition.
Oh, yeah. This is a rule that a lot of people have heard of.
Right, like never end a sentence with a preposition.
Exactly. But the truth is, this rule is not as strict as it used to be.
Right, and in fact, in everyday speech, it's perfectly acceptable to end a sentence with a preposition.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it sounds very natural to say things like, where are you at? Or who did you go with?
Exactly, and no one's going to bat an eye if you say that.
Right.
But in more formal writing, it's generally best to avoid ending a sentence with a preposition.
Right, because it can sound a little bit informal.
Yeah.
So if you can rephrase the sentence to avoid ending it with a preposition, then that's usually the best way to go.
Okay, so for example, instead of saying, where are you at?
Mm-hmm.
You could say, where are you?
Right. Or at what location are you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the same goes for who did you go with? You could say, with whom did you go?
Right.
Which sounds a little bit more formal.
Yeah, okay.
So it's really just about knowing your audience
Mm-hmm.
and writing in a way that's appropriate for the situation.
Okay, let's move on to another one. Misplaced modifiers.
Oh, yeah, these can be tricky.
Yeah.
And they can also be quite funny.
Again, yeah.
So a misplaced modifier is basically a word or phrase that's not placed next to the word that it's supposed to modify.
Right, so for example, you might say, walking down the street, the dog barked at me.
Mm-hmm.
But that sentence implies that the street was walking.
Right, because the phrase walking down the street is next to the word street.
Exactly.
So it sounds like the street is the one that's walking.
Right. Which, of course, doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So how do we fix this?
Well, you just need to move the modifier next to the word that it's supposed to modify.
Okay.
So the correct sentence would be, the dog walking down the street barked at me.
Right.
Now it's clear that the dog is the one that's walking.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's just about paying attention to the placement of your modifiers and making sure that they're modifying the right words.
Okay, let's move on to our last one, who versus whom.
Oh, yeah. This is another one that a lot of people get confused about.
Yeah.
And it's understandable because in everyday speech, we often use who for both subjects and objects.
Right.
But in more formal writing, it's important to use who for subjects and whom for objects.
Okay, so can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So the subject of a sentence is the person or thing that's doing the action. And the object of a sentence is the person or thing that's receiving the action.
Okay.
So if you're asking a question about the subject of a sentence, you use who.
Okay.
Like who is going to the store.
Right.
But if you're asking a question about the object of a sentence, you use whom.
Okay.
Like whom did you see at the store?
So how can we remember this?
Well, one trick that I use is to replace who or whom with he or him.
Oh.
If he sounds right, then you use who. And if him sounds right, then you use whom.
Okay, so for example, in the sentence, who is going to the store? If we replace who with he, it sounds right, he is going to the store.
Exactly. So we know that who is correct.
Okay, and in the sentence, whom did you see at the store? If we replace whom with him, it sounds right, you saw him at the store.
Exactly. So we know that whom is correct.
Got it.
Yeah. So it's just a little trick to help you remember which one to use. So as we wrap up this deep dive on common grammar mistakes, we've covered a lot of ground, from apostrophes to their to I and me, to less and fewer subject-verb agreement, double negatives, that time and which ending sentences with prepositions, misplaced modifiers, and who versus whom.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is, but it's all important stuff.
It is.
And hopefully you found this helpful. Yeah, I think, grammar is something that we can all always improve on.
Right. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it.
Exactly.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just keep practicing and you'll get there.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Right. There are so many resources available online and in libraries.
Exactly.
So if you're ever unsure about something, just look it up.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you can always reach out to us.
Yeah, we're always happy to help.
So as a final thought for you to think about as you go about your day today, consider which of these grammar points you encounter most frequently and how a conscious effort to apply these fixes could immediately enhance your clarity and impact in communication.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point.
Thanks for joining us.
It was fun.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye.